So a friend of mine asked me the other day, is journaling valuable or is it just a waste of time? You hear all this stuff on the internet about how journaling changes everything, and it almost feels a little fake. Well, back in 2020, when we had all the shutdowns, I owned 2 in-person businesses that were generating all my income, and they were closed for 3 months. I had lost a third of my customers, and I had real concerns about how I was gonna make rent. And I turned to a journal as a way of getting all my swirling thoughts out of my head and down on paper. I had no idea how I was gonna get out of the mess I was in, but I knew I needed to get my thoughts and my struggles and my goals out of my head. And over the next 2 years, my business went from almost shutting its doors to over $1.5 million in revenue. So yes, journaling does work. Here is the exact steps that I followed in my journal to turn my business around and take back control of my life. Step 1, take an emotional dump. So before I even bought a journal, I just took out a piece of paper and I started writing. I started writing all the problems, all the complaints, all of my goals, just anything that was on my mind. I just wanted to unload everything onto a piece of paper. So a friend and mentor of mine called this process taking an emotional dump. With everything going on, it's like there's this backup, and the only way to get it out is to put it on paper. So I wrote down how unfair it was that the government shut us down, how people that I used to consider family had given up on us, and how disappointed I was in myself that I had let this happen. It was basically a bitch fest. You ever have that friend that complains every time you see them, and you're listening to it and you're thinking, dude, get over yourself, life isn't that bad. That's how you feel about yourself when you write all this stuff down and you read it back. If you're gonna do this, I would commit to writing 3 full pages. After those 3 pages, it felt like everything was clear and I was able to focus on what I wanted next. So then I spent the next 2 pages writing what I wanted the next year to look like. No matter where you are in life, you always get to choose the step that you take next. I felt like I was ready for a fresh start, so I moved on to step number 2, which is the setup. Next, I set up my journal. I use the bullet journal method, which gives you a basic framework but allows you to customize everything. I prefer to use a paper journal so that I minimize the amount of distractions every time I open my journal. I use a Luke Durham 1917 notebook. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Usually a journal lasts me about 90 to 120 days, so it's perfect for a season of your life. I'll save you the time of reading the whole bullet journal method. I set up 4 different pages. So the first one is the mission, values, goal page. The second one is the monthly log. The third one is the habits page, and the fourth one is the daily log. The mission, purpose, goals page. Here's where I remind myself of my mission and the values I'm hoping to develop over these next 90 days. And I also write down what my yearly goals are. I usually have 1 to 3 goals. No more than 3, but you're actually more effective if you only pick 1. I set a goal for myself to get $1 million in revenue and to 5x my personal income. At the time, I was barely able to make rent. This is the first page of the journal because I want to remind myself of my mission, my values, and my goals every single time I open that journal. And it's really the whole purpose of the journal. Get really clear about this before you move on to the next step. The next page you set up is the monthly log, and this is just a log of what has happened that month or what events you have coming up. And this is really a great reference for you to see what's going on and where you're at in a given month and how close you've gotten to your mission, values, and goals. The setup of this journal should take you no more than 30 to 60 minutes. Don't waste time searching YouTube to try to find the perfect stencils to set up your bullet journal. Really, you want to get as fast as you can from idea to action. A new journal is like a fresh start, and when you feel beaten down in life, that's often when you need that fresh start the most. But I've had a lot of fresh starts over the years. The thing that really matters is connecting your dreams to your daily actions. And that's where step number 3, the habits page, comes in. What you do over the weeks and months and years matters more than what you do over a given day. So the main focus is on showing up. And the key is to define what showing up actually looks like. So you're gonna take your big goals and you're gonna break it down into the daily habits that you need to do to achieve those goals over time. So if your goal is to lose 15 pounds, then you might need to eat right and work out. But you need to define what eating right is. Does that mean you're tracking your food? Does that mean you're hitting specific calories? Are you avoiding certain foods? And what does working out look like? Are you gonna go to the gym? And how much time are you gonna spend at the gym? Are you gonna do weightlifting? You have to be really clear about what constitutes success for that daily habit. So before I start my habits page, I write down each habit and then I define success for each one of those habits. If you wanna get up at 5 a.m., that means 5 a.m., not 5:15 or 5:30. It means before 5 a.m., you are up. And if you did it, then you get to color in the box. And if you didn't, then it's empty. My habits around building $1 million business were reading, critical tasks, working out, and eating right every single day, among a few other things. So once I defined those, then I had to decide what level of commitment am I gonna have towards those habits. At the time, I was really struggling, so I decided to go 100% all in and be perfect on each one of my habits. Now, you can go 90% or 80% compliance, but you need to decide up front and then dial in your life according to this decision. If you really want to focus on discipline, commit to doing 100% of your habits for 90 days. And if you fall off, then restart. But in practice, you actually can get away with 90% or even 85% and still get the results that you want while balancing some of the other inevitable things that come up in life. So this is the day and this is the habit. And on this page, you can write up to 15 habits and visualize 90 days for each one. I use these little marker pens by Stedletter, and every time I fill in the box, it's like a little win. And if I can fill in all the boxes for that day, then I've won that day. And you do that 4 or 5 days in a row, and you get this winning streak going, and it's hard to stop yourself. The hard part is getting yourself started. And that's where the daily log comes in. The daily log is like a meeting with myself, where I clear the decks, I connect with my goals, and I create the critical tasks of the day. So I start with the emotional dump. And these are just 3 things that I'm afraid of or worried about or just emotional about. And it's just my chance to kind of whine a little bit at the beginning of the day and really clear the decks and get myself to neutral. Then I would write down 3 things I'm grateful for. And this just reminds me that life is better than my emotions might make it seem. So I might write down, I'm grateful for this cup of coffee or the view or the chair that I'm sitting in. So once I am there, I write down 3 things that I want to brag about. So these are 3 things that I am proud of that I've had something to do with over the last 24 to 48 hours. And this gives me some confidence because really, world is not as bad as you think it is. There's some things to be grateful for, and you've done some pretty cool shit. And so that reminds you that you're capable of doing cool shit, and it motivates you to do more cool shit. So after I've done those 3 things, then I write down my 3 goals, and I'll write them down either as I am statements or I'll just write down the goals to remind myself what the hell I am focused on. After that, I'm writing down my critical tasks of the day. Usually it's 1 to 5 things. I have found that 5 is a good number, but if I avoid the most important task, then I cut it down to 1. So I always kind of put a star next to the most important task, and I make sure that that one gets done every single day. The rest of the daily log is appointments that I might have, notes that I might take, notes from books that I read, whatever it is. I try to use that daily log for all the notes that I take throughout the day, because every time I open that up, it reminds me of my goals and my critical task for the day. The stuff that I would write in this journal is actually pretty mundane, but it's the boring stuff that gets you to where you want to go. And the more days you show up, the more likely you are to reach your goals. You know what's kind of crazy about this is looking through my old journals, it actually looks like more work now in retrospect than it was at the time I was doing it. At the time I was doing it, I was just showing up every day and just doing the things that I said I was going to do. It didn't feel like that much work, but now looking back on it, it feels like a ton of work. And I remember at the time when I started it, it felt like a ton of work to get to where I wanted to be. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh yeah, that's fine for you, you have all these advantages and all this experience and whatever, just know that when I started this, I had no idea how I was going to get to where I wanted to go. I had no idea how I was going to turn my business around. I had no idea how I was going to get back on track with my life and be happy every day. I just wrote things down and tried to show up every single day. And then as things started to improve, I started to make these little adjustments and keep going in the direction that I wanted to go. The other huge benefit of creating a journal, and I've got stacks of these things, is that you get to look back on what you were thinking back then, what you were thinking 2, 3, 4 years ago, and look back at all of the things you've accomplished. And you remind yourself like, I did some pretty cool shit. Like, I'm actually pretty great at this stuff. And when you remind yourself of things that you've accomplished in the past, and everyone has accomplished something in the past, then it motivates you to do more cool shit in the future. In fact, just producing this video has me fired up about what I want to do in 2023. I want this for you. So start keeping a journal for 2023. If you're new to this channel, my name is Jay. I produce 1 to 2 videos a week on topics around business, health, personal development, books, and any other fun experiments in life. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. Stay focused, stay curious, and keep showing up.